All right, so second half. So this is what you need to do. You need to go to MyLabs Plus, go to the e-text, click on Chapter 1, Data Collection, the Section 1, 2, which is the one that we are currently in, Observational Studies versus Design Experiment. The first outcome, it'll say number 1, distinguish between observational study and the design experiment, and then I need you to watch that video. And as you watch it, what I want you to do is determine these 4 things. Number 1, are we looking at an observational study or design experiment? Number 2, is this a response variable, or what is the response variable? Number 3, what are the explanatory variable or variables if there's multiples? And then number 4, are there any confounding or lurking variables? And if you can't think of any, maybe you can think of what are the means that they went to prevent any confounding or lurking variables. So if they did their job right, they shouldn't have had any. All right, so there's going to be 2 experiments on that video. Go ahead, pause this video, watch that, and when you're done, come back and we'll finish off this section. All right, so now that you're back, let's talk about that first experiment. So the first experiment was the human study, right? So was this an observational study or was this a designed experiment? So hopefully you noticed that this was an observational study. Right? They were just asking people about cell phone use and stuff, right? They didn't give anybody anything. This was an observational study. Number 2, what was the response variable? So hopefully you could tell it was brain tumors, right? Whether they had brain tumors or not. That's what they were looking for. The third thing, the explanatory variable. So what were some of the explanatory variables? So in this case, right, it was cell phone use. So again, the cell phone use might explain brain tumors, the response variable, right? Hopefully you see how that worked out. And then number 4, were there any confounding or lurking variables? So again, these are kind of things you just have to think about. Obviously, it's specifically things that are missing from the experiment, so they're not going to be telling you what these are. Some things that I thought of. So for confounding, I could see maybe if cell phones pick up multiple transmits or multiple signals. So maybe cell phones pick up and transmit multiple signals that you can't distinguish from each other. So maybe it's actually not just cell phones themselves, but it's some sort of signals that cell phones are getting or transmitting. So maybe like radio waves or UV rays or something like that, microwaves. And that's actually what's causing brain tumors. So that might be a confounding variable. For lurking variables, I was thinking maybe something with battery life, right? Maybe if you have a cell phone that's charged more often, or that has a higher charge more often, right? That could maybe be causing brain tumors. Or if you just have one that's pretty much dead all the time, or really close to being dead, maybe that would affect things. Also, maybe people who hold cell phones up to their ear versus using headphones. So they didn't talk about any of that. Maybe if you have headphones in so the cell phone's not directly next to your ear, that could affect brain tumors versus if you actually have it up to your ear to make phone calls. So yeah, again, this one, it's okay if you didn't necessarily immediately get these, but these are just kind of good questions to ask yourself anytime you're looking at any kind of experiment. Are there any kind of variables that they're not seeing or ones that they can't separate? All right, and that last one, the second experiment, that was the rat study. So was this an observational study or a designed experiment? So hopefully you saw, this was pretty easily seen as a designed experiment, right? They actually gave them different radiations, so they were treating the rats. Speaking of, what was the response variable? So same thing, it was still brain tumors. Right? But this time, since this was an experiment, it's a little unethical to do that with humans, so we just used rats instead, or they used rats instead. So number 3, what were the explanatory variables? So it might have been they said it real quickly, I think, but essentially it seemed like radio frequency waves, or radiation, was what they were applying to each of these rats. So maybe the radio frequency radiation is what's actually causing these brain tumors. All right, number 4, what are some confounding or lurking variables? Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't really think of anything either. They put a lot of effort into this to make sure that they didn't have any. So in that case, what are some of the ways that they fought the confounding variables and the lurking variables? Now this one you should be able to answer, right? They listed all these things out. So there were 3 different groups. I believe there was that control group, one with a global radiation and one for just the US, I believe. The temperatures were all the same, so that wouldn't have affected anything. They also had the same humidity, and they had the same food and water access, right? All of these things are trying to keep away those lurking variables. So temperature is not going to be affected, the humidity shouldn't be an issue, and the food and water sources wouldn't be an issue either. All right. Hopefully this made sense. As always, if not, let me know. We can definitely talk about it. Other than that, you have a great day.